What would you do if the woman you gave your life to vanished on a so-called healing retreat, only to drain your bank account with her lover and leave you for broke? Would you beg for closure? Or would you watch from the shadows and smile, knowing you already struck first? Because me, I didn't just get revenge, I rewrote the ending. My name's Martin Keller. I'm 42 years old. I work in estate development, mostly commercial renovations. But what I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with drywall or profits. It's about my wife, Lindsay, and how she stole everything, but had no idea what I'd already taken from her first. We'd been married 9 years, not 10, not 20, just 9. But let me tell you, when betrayal hits, it doesn't care how long you've been together. It just burns through everything. Lindsay and I weren't perfect. Who is? But I loved her. I gave her stability, vacations, trust, a home. And when my father passed away last spring, he left me just over $2.3 million in property and cash. It was supposed to be my reset button. Instead, it nearly became the nail in my coffin. You see, Lindsay started acting different right after the funeral. Colder, like I was annoying her just by breathing. At first, I figured she was just overwhelmed, grieving even. But then the late-night texts started, the locked phone, the girls-only wellness weekends. I'd ask questions, she'd deflect or cry, manipulation in mascara. It wasn't until one of her retreats that everything shattered. That weekend, I got a call from my bank. An unusual wire transfer had gone through, $350,000 to an account I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. I called Lindsay. No answer. Texted her. Silence. So I drove home early from a work trip. The house, empty, her closet, half-packed. The safe, unlocked, my father's gold watch gone. The backup hard drive where I stored all our shared financials, missing. She wasn't just leaving me, she was robbing me. But here's where things get interesting. You see, I'd been suspicious for weeks, and I hadn't just been asking questions. I'd been recording answers. Behind the living room mirror, I'd installed a silent camera. It wasn't legal, and I didn't care. My gut told me something was wrong, and I needed proof. I'd seen too many men blindsided in divorce court. So when she thought she was alone, giggling on speakerphone with a man named Caleb, I was watching. Every flirty whisper. Every plan to disappear to Belize. Every time she said, "He's clueless, he still trusts me." But I wasn't clueless. I was already preparing my response. I didn't just want to get even. I wanted her to feel what betrayal really felt. Let me take you back 3 weeks before the wire transfer. That was the first moment I knew she was cheating. It was a Tuesday. Lindsay had said she was going to her yoga class, but she left in a dress she only wore when she wanted to be looked at. The kind with the slit up the thigh, perfume on her wrist, lip gloss, and not the kind you wear to sweat. So I followed her. I'm not proud of it, maybe I should be, but I stayed 3 cars behind. She drove 30 minutes out of town, parked at a cheap boutique hotel, and waited. 10 minutes later, a tall guy in jeans and a leather jacket walked up and kissed her like they'd done it 100 times, and just like that my world collapsed. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just watched and thought, you're not the only one with secrets. I didn't confront her. That would have been too easy, too emotional, and I wanted more than an apology. I wanted to control the ending, so instead, I played along. I cooked dinner, rubbed her shoulders, listened to her talk about clearing her energy. I smiled through it all. But behind the scenes, I met with my lawyer. Quietly moved 90% of my inheritance into a hidden trust under a business name I knew she'd never recognize. Filed for a forensic accountant to monitor any strange movements in our joint accounts. And most importantly, I began scripting a very different story for the woman who thought she was playing me. She believed I was asleep at the wheel, but I was already steering the crash. The day she left for her healing retreat, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "You deserve peace. Martin, this will help both of us." What she meant was, By the time I'm back, you'll have nothing. But what she didn't know was I'd already followed her to that mountain resort once before. And I knew exactly who she was meeting, because the man she was sleeping with wasn't just a lover. He was someone I'd paid to get close to her. And what happened next? That's when the real fun began. When she left that morning with her yoga mat and a bag full of lies, she thought I'd be crying into a coffee mug by noon. Instead, I was on the balcony, watching the sunrise and smiling, because the man she thought was her secret, he was already working for me. Let's rewind just a bit. 3 months earlier, I met Caleb in a bar downtown. I didn't know his name then. He was just some loudmouth flirting with the waitress and talking big about freelance work and under-the-table money. He said he could sell an affair to a nun. That got my attention. I asked him to sit, told him I needed someone. Charming, dangerous, willing to get dirty. He smiled, leaned in, and said, "Whose life are we ruining?" I gave him Lindsay's name, her favorite spots, what kind of man she liked, her social media, everything. He studied it like a hunter before a kill. Within 2 weeks, he accidentally ran into her at the gym. Another 2 weeks? She was texting him late at night while I snored beside her, and just like that I had my own inside man. Caleb sent me screenshots, recordings, even photos. I watched her fall in love with him in real time. Every smirk she gave him was a dagger to the chest. But I didn't stop it. I let it burn, because I needed her to believe she was safe. That's the key to revenge, not rage, patience. When she left for the retreat, Caleb told her he had everything arranged. They'd meet at a mountain cabin, outside Flagstaff, no cell reception, no eyes, just them, cash and freedom. She'd already packed up jewelry, sold 2 of my watches, and sent nearly $700,000 from our joint investments into a shell account they set up together, she thought. She was finally escaping the boring husband with all the money. What she didn't know was that account. The one she was funneling everything into, I created it. Caleb just handed her the keys. She was stealing from herself, and I was quietly transferring every cent to a new trust in my name. By the time her so-called retreat started, she was already bankrupt. She just didn't know it yet. The morning she met him at the cabin, I watched from a rented car on the ridge. Binoculars in one hand, coffee in the other. She jumped into his arms like a teenager, told him she loved him, said she'd never look back. She said my name once. He's spineless. He'll be fine. Probably cry to his lawyer and move on. Funny how the spineless ones always see the most clearly. They went inside, and I waited. 4 hours, then 5. Caleb sent me a message, just 4 words. She thinks it's done. Perfect. I drove off, slow and steady. I had no intention of seeing her again in person. Not yet. Back home, I made it official. Froze every joint asset, reported unauthorized withdrawals, filed an affidavit stating that I suspected identity theft, technically true, and triggered every red flag the financial world had to offer. Within 2 days, her accounts were locked, her cards declined, her cell plan cut. The woman who thought she was sailing off into the sunset was now stuck in the mountains with a man who suddenly stopped being charming the moment the money dried up. Because I told Caleb to walk away, I paid him half, up front. The other half, only once he ghosted her completely, and he did. Vanished. Left her with a broken-down rental car, no working phone, and the realization that she had nothing, not even the man she betrayed me for. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was shaking, quiet, different. "Martin, please call me. I don't know what's happening. Caleb's gone. My accounts are frozen. I think someone hacked us." Someone did. Me, a week passed, then 2. She came back to town wearing the same clothes she left in. The cab driver dropped her at the curb. I was standing at the window sipping a drink, watching her stare at the locked door of what used to be her home. I'd changed the locks, had the deed rewritten, every title, every joint document, gone. She didn't even own the car she used to drive. She knocked. I didn't answer. She called again, another unknown number. This time I picked up. Her voice cracked the moment she heard mine. "Martin, I don't know what happened. Caleb lied. He took everything. My cards aren't working. I need help." I paused, let the silence settle. Then I said, "You stole from me, Lindsay, and I saw everything." She gasped, a sharp inhale like a guilty child. "What? No, I didn't. Martin, I was scared. You never listened. I cut her off. The camera behind the mirror, the bank transfers, the fake yoga classes. I watched the whole movie, Lindsay, and you wrote the ending. There was nothing after that. No denial, no excuse, just silence and a whisper. "Please, don't ruin me." I looked out at her through the glass. The woman who once kissed me every morning and whispered about growing old together, now reduced to a liar standing in the cold with a duffel bag of lies. I said one final thing. "You already ruined yourself. I just made sure it stuck," and I hung up. People ask me if I regret it. They think revenge makes you hollow, but that's not true. What makes you hollow is trusting someone who smiles while they destroy you. Revenge just lets you fill the cracks with clarity. She came back with a lawyer, a cheap one. Young, fresh out of law school, probably working on retainer for people who think betrayal is a valid currency. He sent me a notice. Formal language. Fake intimidation. My client, Lindsay Tate, is requesting immediate access to shared marital assets withheld unlawfully. Cute. What he didn't know was that I'd already been 3 steps ahead. Long before she packed her bags and vanished with Caleb, I was sitting in a private office with my own attorney, drafting every protection I'd need. I had records, surveillance, bank statements, signed authorizations, even video of her admitting. She moved the money, so for a future with Caleb. She said it on camera. She had no idea she was being recorded at the cabin. Caleb wore a button cam I gave him the week before they left. So when her lawyer came with threats, I came with proof. I didn't even blink. I called him directly, told him I was prepared to file for divorce under fraud, asset manipulation, and emotional abuse, and that I had evidence that would not only destroy her in court, but expose him for pushing a case without proper due diligence. He went quiet. I said, "You might want to find better clients." He withdrew representation 2 days later. Lindsay tried coming by again. This time she looked thinner, hollow-eyed. Her makeup was forced, smile fake. I didn't answer the door, just watched. She stared up at the camera above the garage, the one she never noticed before, and for the first time I saw recognition in her eyes. She knew I'd seen everything. A week later, she got desperate. She tried to go after my parents, told them I was mentally unwell, said I was hoarding money and had become vengeful. My mother called me in a panic, told me Lindsay showed up crying, asking for help. I didn't even flinch. I sent her the footage. 5 minutes of crystal clear betrayal. Her voice, her plans. Caleb, the money. My mother didn't call me back for hours. When she did, she just said, I had no idea she was that kind of woman. Neither did I. But now we both knew. Lindsay moved into a motel, not a nice one, the kind with flickering signs and stains that don't wash out. She had no car, no job, no credit line. Everything she thought she was building with Caleb turned to ash the moment he ghosted her. And the beauty of it, he was real. But he wasn't. Caleb had a record, nothing violent but sketchy enough that no court would believe him over me if she tried to call him as a witness. He was a ghost, a mistake, a blur in a police file, exactly how I planned it. But Lindsay still had one move left. She filed a formal complaint, tried to paint me as emotionally abusive, said I controlled her access to finances, isolated her and manipulated the household. She was going for sympathy. The legal system loves a victim, so I gave them a villain, but not me. I walked into that mediation room with Everything: emails, messages, screenshots of her laughing with Caleb as they planned to drain my inheritance. Money from my grandfather's estate, meant for our future children. She used the word drain him 4 times in a single message. That was enough. The mediator paused halfway through and said, "I think this discussion may be over." Lindsay's face was pale. She looked lost. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. I just sat there, calm, silent. Because revenge doesn't need noise, it only needs precision. 3 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. She got nothing. Not the house, not the car, not even the silverware. Everything she'd stolen, already locked up in my trust, untouchable. She walked away with a single suitcase and a court order banning her from contacting me or my family. The woman who once whispered, "Forever," in my ear now stood outside the courthouse, clutching a half-broken purse, staring down at a world that no longer welcomed her. But I wasn't done. Revenge is never just about what's taken. It's about what's remembered. So I did something cruel. Maybe too cruel. I had a copy of our wedding. Photo printed and framed, the one where she was looking up at me, eyes wide with love or maybe just ambition, and mailed it to the motel. Inside, a note. "This is the last time you'll ever own something of mine." No name, no return address, just truth. I found out later she tried to call Caleb. One last desperate reach. He'd changed numbers, deleted accounts, moved out of state. He was already on to the next job, probably seducing some other mark. I gave him that freedom, paid him well to disappear and never return. She was alone, truly alone. People talk about closure like it's some magical moment, a sunrise after the storm. But sometimes closure is quieter. It's the sound of nothing. No more lies. No more excuses, just silence and peace. But even after all this, I wasn't done. There was one final card to play, one thing I'd held back. Because if you're going to destroy someone, you might as well finish the job. People think revenge ends in courtrooms or screaming matches. It doesn't. Real revenge ends quietly, when the person who ruined your life realizes you rebuilt it without them and made sure they couldn't touch a single part of it. Lindsay thought she could take my inheritance, start fresh with Caleb, and erase me like a bad memory. But I wasn't a memory. I was the consequence. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter in the mail. Not from her, from the bank. Apparently Lindsay tried opening a line of credit in my name. She still had an old social security number written down from a tax return years ago. Must have thought she'd be clever. What she didn't know was that I'd already flagged my credit months before everything went down. Every account, every alias locked. The moment her application was submitted, I got a ping. So did the bank's fraud team. They called me. I just said, "File the report, press charges." That was it. Lindsay was arrested. Identity theft. Attempted. Fraud, violation of court orders. She spent 48 hours in a holding cell. Her mugshot went public. Face bloated, mascara streaked, a far cry from the woman who once flirted her way through dinner parties and charity fundraisers. It was everywhere, and I made sure it reached the right people. There was one more thing she cared about. A position on a local non-profit board, one she used to brag about, said it made her feel seen. Important. They dropped her the moment the arrest hit headlines. Publicly, they released a statement that said, "We do not tolerate unethical behavior, regardless of past service." That probably stung more than the jail cell, because Lindsay never feared jail. She feared being forgotten, and still, I had one final move, the quietest one. Months before everything blew up, I'd found her old laptop, the one she stopped using. She forgot it even existed. It had every photo, every email, even old journals. I copied it all. There were files on there about her past, before me. Turns out I wasn't the first man she used for security. There was a guy named Mark, older, wealthy, reclusive. She was with him for 2 years. took. Money left him broken. He tried to sue her back then. She buried it with a non-disclosure and a payoff. I found him. He still had copies of their messages, her threats, her lies, and he was ready to talk. So I did something cold. I wrote a full exposé, anonymously sent it to a local journalist who runs a podcast about suburban corruption and hidden scandals. The kind that goes viral. The story hit within a week, titled The Gold Digger's Game, How One Woman Left a Trail of Broken Men Behind Her. She wasn't named directly, but anyone who knew her knew. The comments section lit up. People connected the dots. Her friends stopped calling. Her family stopped defending her. She vanished from everything. And me, I thrived. The inheritance I thought I lost. Safe, the business I wanted to start. I launched it with a clean name, clean books, and no emotional dead weight. The best part? Peace, real peace. The kind that doesn't come from getting even. It comes from knowing the one who betrayed you will spend the rest of their life wondering, how did it all fall apart, and never finding the answer. They say living well is the best revenge. Maybe they're right, but I say living better, and making sure they know it. That's the real win. I never saw Lindsay again, but sometimes I imagine her alone in some small, dimly lit apartment, scrolling through old photos on a cracked phone, wondering what could have been if she'd just stayed loyal. Too late for regrets. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness, some endings are earned, and some lessons are delivered with silence.